Well, Julian Assange's mother, Christine Assange, joins us now on the phone. Good morning. Thanks for your time. Why did your son choose to make that speech last night?
Because that's an honest and accurate speech about what's happening to the freedom of the press in the world. And the freedom of the press is extremely important in the front line to protect the citizens from corruption in their government. We rely on the freedom of the press to let us know when our government's not acting in our interest. The United States of America is cracking down on the freedom of the press. WikiLeaks was the first casualty, and they're now bringing laws in to crack down on everybody else. So this is at the heart of the issue of what's happening with WikiLeaks, and that's why he's asking that the Americans look backwards and see what they've lost, reclaim their values of the Founding Fathers, honour the Constitution and uphold the First Amendment.
But if you're talking about press freedom, the country that has granted him asylum is anything but a bastion of press freedom. We've already heard this morning about radio stations being closed, executives from newspapers and columnists being jailed and fined for defamation. The list goes on. Legislation there is being changed to limit what media can do ahead of presidential elections next year. So why does your son want to go to Ecuador? And if he's there, will he push for greater press freedom in Ecuador?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that some of these organisations that call themselves human rights organisations are sitting cowering on the fence saying nothing about persecution of WikiLeaks and Julian, but are echoing US claims against Ecuador, which have only really risen in any kind of loudness since Ecuador has given Julian asylum. Whereabouts did you obtain your information, by the way, about Ecuador's press freedom?
Human Rights Watch. There's the committee for... We spoke to the International Institute for Press Freedom and the Committee to Protect Journalists. They're all saying exactly the same thing. So are they all wrong?
Have you read the Constitution?
The Constitution of...
Ecuador.
And what's
in regard to their legislation in human rights and press freedom?
Yes, but what's in the Constitution and what's happening on the ground would seem to be two different things. Are you claiming that the Committee to Protect Journalists, Human Rights Watch, that they're all wrong?
You've been to Ecuador yourself, have you?
No, I haven't, but you've been there.
Exactly. I've been to Ecuador and I've read the Constitution, two things that most of the media haven't done. In addition to that, most of the media have not read justiceforassange.com with the number 4 and are constantly spruiking mistakes, saying things like Julian has been charged, that the WikiLeaks...
No, wait a minute. Christine Assange,
hang on. Point. Look, you tell me what the point is. Are you interviewing me or are you spruiking and just using me to bounce off?
No, I'm asking you to address the allegations, not the allegations, but the circumstances that have been quoted by organisations like the Committee to Protect Journalists and Human Rights Watch about press freedom in Ecuador. You were the one that brought up press freedom, talking about the United States.
Right, and why did you bring up Ecuador press freedom?
Sorry, I missed what you just said.
Why are you bringing up Ecuador press freedom when the issue is asylum?
Because your son has been granted asylum by Ecuador. If he makes that passage to Ecuador, will he fight for press freedom in Ecuador?
Why are you bringing up press freedom in Ecuador when the issue is the fact that the United States is persecuting my son, aided and abetted by its attack dog allies, Sweden, the UK and Australia? Much more serious issues than some rumour of press freedom from human rights organisations that are yet to declare their support for what's happening with WikiLeaks.
Well, I think the journalists that have been jailed in Ecuador wouldn't say that it's a less serious situation there.
Well, you know, I don't think you know a lot about media situation in Ecuador, do you? Not really. You've just read a few human rights things.
Well, you tell me about your experience in Ecuador.
I would suggest that you go away and do some more research, because a lot of what you're hearing is actually propaganda. Okay, now they've come out, one of the things that Ecuador experiences, which many countries experience, in fact most countries in the world experience, is that media that is owned by big business is against governments that want sovereignty, from foreign nationals, against governments that share the country's wealth with their populace, against countries that fight for environmental rights, and against countries that have constitutions which are underscored by human rights. So we also know that many human rights groups are funded by the US. Now, when the human rights groups come out and stop sitting on the fence and start throwing themselves in behind other people who are outraged by the persecution of WikiLeaks and its staff and Julian Assange, outraged by what Sweden has done in breaching its own protocols and Julian's human legal rights, then I'll start taking notice of what the human rights group have to say about Ecuador.
OK, well, Julian Assange in his speech talked about Ecuador. He mentioned the United States, Britain, Australia. He even mentioned Pussy Riot in Russia, but there was no mention of Sweden, where he's wanted for questioning on sexual assault allegations. Why didn't he mention Sweden?
Well, we've been talking about Sweden ad nauseum. He no longer is involved with Sweden. He has attempted to... by the way, have you read justiceforassange.com?
I don't understand why that's relevant. I've asked you a question about why he didn't mention Sweden in his speech.
Well, how long would you like him to talk for? 2 hours? Would that have satisfied you? Because if you want to read justiceforassange.com, or you would like to read wlcentral.org/node/1418, which is the submission to Australian Parliament in March 2011, which documents the many abuses of Julian's legal rights, then go and do so. But I think Julian has better things to do right now than talk about the documented abuses of Sweden. You journalists should go and do your jobs. Why aren't you talking about the documented abuses of Sweden?
OK, Christine Assange, we'll leave it there. We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
OK then.